Hello, everybody. My name is Jim Hoko. I am the Executive Director of the Behavior Analyst Leadership Council. BALC is a trade organization. We were founded in 2015. We've had multiple conferences in the Northeast. We are committed to supporting behavior analysts serving as leaders, managers, and business owners. We are very happy that we are going to be having our next Behavior Analysis Leadership Conference in March. And it's going to be in Miami. So we're going to hope that you are going to make it to Miami in March for the BALC 2022 conference. We have 4 fantastic tracks: business leadership, clinical leadership, teaching behavior analysis in the academy, and behavior analysis after hours, health and wellness. To register, go to https:/m8kwew. And today I'm happy to introduce Greg Elsky. Hey, Greg, you can turn your video on now. Greg is the founder and CEO of the Behavioral Learning Network. He's a BCBAD and former president of Cal ABA. He has a clinical psychology doctorate. He's a licensed marriage and family therapist, and he's father of twins who says he loves burritos and hip hop. We'll get into that in a little bit. So without further ado, we are going to welcome Greg. Hey, Greg.
Hey, Jim. Thanks so much for having me on. By the way, I want to say I'm super excited about the BALC conference. We will be in Florida, so I cannot wait to get there.
That is fantastic. That is just great. Yeah, and it's, you know, things are happening all around. The country is opening up. How are things in California? I know you're in California. I'm all the way on the other side of the country on the East Coast in Connecticut, but is the world back to normal?
Normal? Well, depends on what you define as normal. If droughts, massive labor shortages, and a pandemic are classified as normal, yep, we're there. But we do have fabulous weather, though.
Well, I do have some other friends in California. They might argue that that's normal for California. So.
That's true.
All right. So what we want to do today is talk about you for a little bit. This is a spotlight on leadership, and you've done some amazing things out there. But first, maybe we should introduce you to people. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Like, have you always lived on the West Coast? Where were you raised? You know, any good stuff from the past?
Yeah, so I was born and raised here in California in the San Fernando Valley. So I am a Valley boy, one of the few and proud. Growing up, I had, I think, 2 real passions outside of, actually, I would say 3. One of them was girls. The other one was skateboarding, and the other one was basketball. And I wasn't very good at girls or basketball, so probably spend most of my time skateboarding. And I still try to do it whenever I can. Makes me happy.
Well, I always like to look for connections, but out of that 3, we only have one connection, and I'm not sure I should tell you what it is, but but it wasn't skateboards. And what was the other thing you said?
Basketball.
It wasn't basketball. All right. So where'd you go to high school?
I went to high school in Van Nuys at a school called Grant High School, a public school out here in the Valley.
That's great. So when you went to high school in Van Nuys, you had your eyes on, you know, starting this behavior analytic company?
Absolutely not. In high school, I was a bit of a slacker, I would say. I spent, like I said, a lot of my time skateboarding. I didn't do that well in high school. I actually didn't. I had big dreams of being a psychiatrist, which was it was my dream for a long time until I realized I wasn't good at chemistry or math. So then I had to pivot.
Wow. And so when did things change? Like, you're not a psychiatrist now, right? I mean, you have a lot of things behind your name, but I don't think the psychiatrist is one of them, right?
No. So I graduated high school, and like I said, I pretty much slacked off pretty hard in high school. And so that was sort of my first wake-up call when most of my friends went off to university and I went to community college. So I started out at Santa Barbara Community College, which was probably the best decision that I ever made in my life, and it really turned my life around. with combination. There were a lot of things that were happening that supported me at that time, but that was kind of when I realized, oh my gosh, I'm blowing my life. And so I really decided to make some changes in my life. Made sure to go to class every single day, studied every single day, did all of my readings, and worked really hard, got good grades, and was able to transfer over to UCLA, which was a dream of mine since the time I was a child. I was hoping to go to medical school, and I was feeling pretty good about myself because I had a strong GPA transferring into UCLA. But as I said, I wasn't very good at chemistry, and realized that was probably not med school is probably not going to be in the cards for me.
Wait, you're going kind of fast for me here. You went from, kind of being a slacker and then going to community college, and then you're talking about med school. So yeah. I'm kind of wondering, like at the community college, was there anybody in particular that, caused, that ignition, that, spark that gets you to start thinking more about yourself?
I think it was a host of things. As I mentioned, there were friends of mine who worked really hard in high school, were off to universities. And one of my friends he was accepted to both UC Berkeley and UCLA. And I remember he decided to go to Berkeley, and I asked him, I said, can I have your acceptance letter to UCLA? And I posted it, not because I was but I used it as motivation. And I posted it right above my bed. And every day when I would come home, I'd look at that acceptance letter, and I was like, I'm going to have one of my own, one of these days. And so I used that to motivate me. I had a high school girlfriend who was very supportive. She went to USC actually, and I just decided the trajectory that my life was on at that time, which was skateboarding and smoking weed, wasn't really gonna get me to where I wanted to be. And so I really decided to make some changes.
That's interesting. I had something similar that I did. I was in a fraternity in college, and the person in the room next to me was an artist. And as I applied to graduate schools, he would paint the name of the graduate school and the style of the school on the wall. And I was trying to get in, and every time I got denied, he would like put a big X over it. And when I got accepted, there was a big circle. So my wall was a mess, but I ended up getting into 3 schools, including Kansas, where I went to in the end. But the point is, it's good to have something that you're looking at, your goal. And I think that's what we're talking about.
Yeah. And I was really excited when I finally got my own acceptance letter. It was a very proud moment for me. Yeah.
So now you're at UCLA.
Yeah. So I get to UCLA. I was a psych major. As I said, my goal was to go to medical school, but realized very early on in the process that I was not very good at chemistry or math, and those are things that you really need in order to get into medical school. So needed to kind of make that pivot. But around that time, the most serendipitous thing happened to me, and that was I was flipping through the catalog. They used to have actual physical catalogs back in those days.
I remember.
Yeah. And I was looking for an upper division elective in psychology, and I came across a class that was called behavior modification. And I thought, that's hilarious. I'm going to modify people. And in particular, my goal was to modify women to get dates. As I mentioned, I was painfully shy, or I didn't mention that, but I was painfully shy. I wanted to meet women, but I wasn't very good at it. And so sort of jokingly, I'm like, okay, this class will help me. Well, wouldn't you know it, the class was taught by a guy by the name of Ivar Lovaas. You might have heard of him. Some people
I think I have. Yep.
Yeah. And he was the most charismatic, brilliant, fascinating person, entertaining. His classes, in a lot of ways, it was like stand-up comedy while you were learning. And he was the greatest. And in that class, I didn't know who he was or what he did. Like I said, my goal was to modify women. Didn't have any idea what I was getting myself into, but fell in love with the field of behavior analysis, although he never used those words back in those days. They called it behavior modification, as I said. That class was called 170A. And if you did well in 170A, if you got an A or a B, you were eligible to go on to 170B, which was the field work section where you actually got to start working with kids. And so I did well, and I was invited to go to 170B, and where I started I worked with my first child with autism as a behavior technician, although back in those days we called them a behavioral therapist. And I remember, I think that was the first time in my life that I felt like I was really good at something. It just sort of spoke to me, and the thought that comes to my mind, I don't know, have you ever seen the movie Good Will Hunting?
Yes, I love that movie.
Yeah, I often, when I do trainings, I often will reference movies to try to help people to connect. Although it's funny, as I've gotten older and I'm starting to really embrace the fact that I'm older now, because nobody gets my movie references anymore.
Well, all you have to do is give me a call, and I guarantee I'm going to get it.
Finally, somebody.
And probably a few that were done before you were born. But anyway.
Yeah, maybe. So in Good Will Hunting, there's a scene where Matt Damon talks about how he can do what he does, and he references Mozart playing the piano, and he goes, he didn't know, he could just do it. And that's kind of how behavior analysis, it just made sense. And behavior analysis really just made sense to me. And I felt really confident. And I was a quick learner. I had some great supervisors back in those days, Janet E. and Jackie Wynn, and Ivar, of course. And I was just good at it, and it felt really good to be good at something and to be able to really help people in a meaningful way. And I thought I was going to do it for a long time, but as anybody who's been a technician for a long time knows, there's physical pain that often goes along with that position. And I was working mostly with little kids at that time, and you sit in these little chairs, as some of us know, and that combined with years of basketball, it just beat up my back. And I was like, I can't do this anymore. And so ultimately I decided, and I had graduated at that time from UCLA as well. And my mom was like, well, you got to do something. And I wasn't ready for grad school. I didn't know if I was going to go to grad school at that time. And so my mom's like, well, be a substitute teacher. So that's what I did to start. And I taught for a little while. Am I going too fast?
No, you're good.
So I taught elementary school, and I used a lot of the information that I had learned in behavior analysis as a classroom teacher. And while I didn't know very much about curriculum, I was really good at behavior management, even at a group level, through a lot of shaping and DRAs and DROs and token systems that I had created for my kids. And I was pretty good at teaching also. And so then I thought, well, and I liked it. I liked being with kids. I liked being in the classroom. And so I started going to graduate school and getting my teaching credential, which I was one class away from finishing that when I decided, I really wanted to be a psychiatrist, as I mentioned. And I thought, well, maybe I can be an MFT. And I'd found a program locally at a professional school called Phillips Graduate Institute that had a really strong reputation for training therapists. And so I stopped one class shy of my credential and entered into a master's program in clinical psychology with an emphasis in marriage and family therapy, where I started doing therapy. And I remember one of the first classes, you have to pick a theoretical orientation. And in marriage and family therapy, this can be things like psychodynamic therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, family systems, these kinds of things. And one of the first days, one of the instructors says to the class, you guys are going to have to pick a theoretical orientation. Does anybody already have one in mind? And of course, I proudly raise my hand and I say behavior analysis. And she goes, oh, we'll get that out of you.
Well, that didn't happen. So
no, it turns out it didn't happen. No. But I did graduate with, with my master's. I did practicums. I practiced as a marriage and family therapist for a little while. I actually trained in Gestalt therapy, which I loved Fritz Perls, and I read everything that he wrote. And I loved Gestalt. I still do like Gestalt. I don't really incorporate it in my work now, but I did that. And then when I graduated, I said, well, let's just keep going. So I went back and completed my PsyD in clinical psychology. But around the time that I'd graduated with my master's, I actually got in touch with one of my mentors from UCLA, Dr. Jody Deming, who had transitioned out of the Lovaas Institute over to the Institute for Applied Behavior Analysis, which was founded by Gary Lavinia and Tom Willis. And and she said, "You want to come work with me and do this autism thing again?" And I will tell you, the first job after I'd graduated, before I spoke to Jody, was manual labor. I was working for a friend of mine. Turns out there are no jobs for non-licensed master's level people out there at that time as a therapist, and I needed to make money. And a friend of mine was a contractor, and he said, "Well, you can carry buckets of dirt, pay you $50 a day." And so that's what I did. So I was doing that for a little while, and until Jody found me and she said, "You want to come back and do this?" And I did, and I fell in love with the field and have kind of not looked back ever since.
Well, that's not quite a direct route to what we're really here to talk about. So, but it is an interesting route. So you started a company 8 or 9 years ago.
I did.
How did that go? What were the challenges? What were the things that were really easy?
Okay, so when I founded the company, a good friend of mine, a dear friend who had who was an entrepreneur in a different industry, he says, "Congratulations, when you start a company, there are a couple things you should know." He said, "One, you're gonna work twice as hard as you've ever worked, but you're gonna hate it half as much." And I think that is absolutely true for my experience. Everything was hard. There was it challenged me in ways that I didn't know could exist. But it also gave me the opportunity to succeed in ways that I didn't know I was capable of. So it's been really a journey. I can tell you, quick story. In the early goings, my wife and I, it felt like every day was a roller coaster in the early goings, because when you have a new company, you're just so sensitive to all kinds of changes, and they happen fast. And so we would wake up in the morning, and by the morning, I would say, 4:35 in the morning, and we'd look at each other and we'd say, "Wonder what's going to happen today?" Because there were days where it was like, "Oh my gosh, I got this new contract. This is the greatest thing ever." And then there were days where, I don't know, a kid would have a serious problem behavior, and maybe staff would have some problems, and I didn't know if I was going to be able to keep my contract. So it was just a constant state of these really high highs and these really low lows. And that went on for a couple of years, I would say, before things started to stabilize a little bit. And so,
Greg, this is a unique opportunity for me. Not that I need this advice, but anyway, you're a marriage and family therapist. And, I know sometimes the work issues kind of come home and there's stress created. Like, how did you and how do you balance the challenges, the stresses, the problems that presents? Because being a leader is not easy. Like, you're developing a company, leadership bleeds into all areas of your life. So I'm figuring now, talking to a marriage and family therapist or licensed, I don't know what the official term is, but I figure I'll get the answer now. So tell me how you work.
So in terms of balance, can we define balance for a second?
I don't think I can.
Yeah, neither can I. I will tell you, I think a big part of it was surrendering. And I think both of us had to surrender to the fact that there wasn't going to be balance, that this was going to be all consuming for a while. And I had told my wife, I'm like, 2 years, that's how long it's going to take, 2 years to get things to stabilize. And I think she tells me I'm a big liar, because here we are, 8 or 9 years later, and we're still not quite there yet. We have a little bit more balance now, but.
Greg, I got to ask, I keep seeing you looking over. Would that person happen to be in your audience right now?
She is. Yeah, she's here. My wife, Heather, is sitting in front of me, keeping me honest. She's reminding me that I have an audience here so that I don't put my foot in my mouth too heavily.
All right, so let's turn to BLN. And I wanted to talk about family because I worked in a program for 3 decades, the same agency, and I considered it to be a family. And I know I've talked to you about BLN, and I'm sort of getting that vibe from you. So tell us about BLN. What type of a company is it? How did it grow, and about the people and the services that you do.
Okay, sure. So I had been providing behavioral services in Southern California and a little bit in Northern California, in the Sacramento area as well, since about 1995. So I had a long history and reputation in this field. Among consumer bases, I had a pretty strong reputation as a really good clinician. Among others, I didn't always have a great reputation because, sometimes you break eggs when you're in the kitchen. It was usually unintentional, but that stuff did happen. But so after a couple of decades of doing this work, I started this process. I think, first off, you talk about family. Heather, my wife, she, about a year into the development of the organization, she joined me. And I'd say that was when, the organization really got a massive push forward. So, really could not have done this without Heather, absolutely. Beyond that, I have been so fortunate to have some amazing clinicians to come and train with me, work with me, help me lead my company. Really, this is our company. And so we do have some really fabulous people, and we do kind of see this as a family. The thing that's been kind of a strange growing pain was when we got to the point, because we have, I used to know every single employee. I used to train every single employee. And at a certain point, that was just not sustainable because of the size and scale of the work that we were doing. And so it's been kind of a strange thing that I don't know everybody anymore, but I do keep a pretty tight knit group among our leadership team and our supervisory team. And we absolutely do consider them family. We cannot do what we do and help the families that we help without them and their leadership. And of course, our amazing behavior technicians with their boots on the ground. In terms of the work we do, I should back up a little bit. We provide behavior and analytic treatment for primarily kids on the autism spectrum. We do work with some other kids with severe problem behaviors, but it is primarily kids on the autism spectrum. We service a lot of young children with autism. Here in Encino, we have a small early intensive behavior intervention center where we service kids aged 2 to 5. And then we also service school age kids. We work with, I think, like 12 different school districts here in Southern California. We also, by the way, provide services in Portland, Oregon, New Hampshire, and Massachusetts as well. So we're kind of all over the place these days.
Right. It would be hard to know everybody in all of those places.
Yeah, it gets difficult. But to your question about family, it's one of the great joys that I have is we have several at this point, people who came to us with little or no experience as behavior technicians who trained with us and worked their way through the ranks. And a couple of them, many of them are leaders in the organization. One of them moved on to become a clinical director and leading our site in Oregon. We have, every time I see people that they're graduating and getting promoted, and I remember them from the beginning, it really is a joy to be able to watch these people grow and to be part of that journey for them.
So that is something that we also share, and something I've been talking about for a long time. And people sometimes think leadership means having all the answers, and you've already talked about the fact that you didn't on occasion. And you had to work collaboratively, and you feel like BLN is a family. And you've just now been talking about lifting people up, and that's kind of the message I keep giving to people: is leadership isn't about knowing everything; it's about lifting people up to wherever they can be. So I love hearing that, but I also don't want to put words in your mouth. My next question is, Greg, what does leadership mean to you? I know it sounds kind of like a canned question, but it's a good one because it's not that easy.
Yeah. So I think about this often. And so I'm going to answer that question with a little bit of an anecdote. And this is, I use this in my training whenever I train supervisors. There's a show that I used to love to watch on TV called Naked and Afraid. Have you ever seen this or heard of this show?
I have seen it. I was a big fan for a while.
Yeah, I love that show. And I actually think it's an amazing demonstration of behavior analytic principles within that show and how the environment controls behavior. But there was one particular episode that really stuck out to me. And in this episode, if you've ever seen that show, they take two strangers, usually a male and a female counterpart, that they drop them off in the middle of nowhere, usually a desert or a cold place, or, just some really hard place to live. And they say, you have to survive for 21 days naked. And in this particular episode, there was a female counterpart who was like a special forces in Canada, really, really capable individual, strong, smart, able to survive. And then her male counterpart was this kind of like hippie guy who touted himself as sort of an expert at making fire, and building fire in these scenarios is really the difference between surviving and not surviving, because it turns out fire provides so much protection for you. It gives you light, heat, keeps the bugs away, allows you to boil water, cook food, like all kinds of things. So they're in this kind of humid environment, and he's doing his thing. He's got his bow drill, and he's trying, and he's just not succeeding in getting the fire lit. So they're like a couple days in, they're getting eaten up by the bugs. They're having a tough time. The two of them are not getting along. And so, and I can tell you, I felt pretty confident by watching this that the female counterpart could have easily started a fire by herself. So one day, what does she do? She goes out into the wilderness by herself. She starts digging. She pulls up some dry tinder. She brings it back to camp and hands it to him and says, try it again. And he does. And sure enough, he gets the fire lit, and they're successful, and they have a great partnership going forward. I think that scenario really captures what is leadership to me. And what it is it's creating environments where other people can succeed. That's what leadership is.
That's a great answer to that question. So how do we foster new leaders in the field, and what would be your advice to them, as to how to become a leader?
Well, I think there are a couple of things. I think number one, I think that there's a little bit of a rush for people to move into leadership. And I think that the first thing is to master your craft, because I think mastery of your craft, whatever that craft is, and there was the book by Malcolm Gladwell, who said you need 10,000 hours to become a master of anything, basically. And if you think about that in the context of the BACB, where it's 2,000 hours, you are not a master. What I usually tell people is, congratulations, you made it to the starting line. Because there's just so much to learn. So I would say, number one, master your craft, because I think what that helps you to do is, number one, be an expert in the things that you're an expert at, but also, and maybe more importantly, to identify the things that you are not an expert at, so that you can get help or say no, to those things. So I think, to your question, what should people do? I think you need to read. I think people need to study. I think we have graduate programs that are they are 2-year programs, and I think we have some fabulous programs nationwide in behavior analysis, but they are 2-year programs, and there is only so much that can be taught in 2 years, and there's so much to learn. So I think people need to continue their education post-certification. They need to find a mentor. And I know this is kind of something that I see and hear people say all the time, but it's not just find any mentor. Find a master, right? I have been fortunate to be able to work with some of the masters in our field, and to learn from some of our masters in our field. And I'm going to take a moment to shout out the person who I think is doing the most innovative work right now in our field, which is Greg Hanley. If you get a chance to, not that he needs more people to fan out over him, but I just think the work that he's doing, the way that he's presenting us and as behavior analysts in terms of safety, rapport, and televisability, I just think are so important. And I think the work he's done is so important. So just want to take a moment to shout him out.
Yeah, well, he's a good person to shout out. Greg's a good guy. He's written a lot of good stuff, some controversial, but it's broadening the field a bit. So
yeah, and you got to take risks sometimes. So I think, not that I trained with him, but I certainly have read everything that he's done. I've gone through his trainings, but I think being able to find a true master as a mentor and spend some time. Don't rush into leadership. Because I think one of the things that people forget is that you can do harm. One of the things that we don't do as behavior analysts, but I think we should do, is take that Hippocratic oath of do no harm. And if you rush into leadership, the downstream effects, if you're not ready, are significant. you can cause harm to your clients. You can cause harm to the staff whom you're supposed to be supporting. You can cause harm to the science, because you end up with these people who go, yeah, I tried that ABA thing and it didn't work for me and I had this bad experience. And it's because maybe somebody wasn't really doing behavior analysis. So I think that people need to not rush. I think you need to find a real mentor. I think you need to do your 10,000 hours supervised, not 2,000, 10,000.
Greg, I've done a number of these spotlights, and that's some of the best advice that I've heard on leadership. So I really, really appreciate it. So what's next for you and for BLN, for your family? What's going on? I mean, you don't need to tell me about your family.
What's next? We're just continuing to try to constantly improve the quality of treatment that we're providing, and we try to do that through improving the quality of our training. We provide pretty heavy duty training at all levels and at all times. And I'm proud of that, but we try not to rest on our laurels. I have an amazing director of training and research, Michael Aragon, soon to be Dr. Michael Aragon, who's really kind of leading that. And I would say one of the next frontiers for us is starting to be producers of research, so that we can help to advance the field and be contributors and not just consumers.
Wow. Well, thank you very much. I would like you to hang on. This has been a great discussion, Greg. Let me share my screen again and say thanks to Greg. Don't go anywhere though, Greg. We're going to close up here. I want to remind everybody that BALC is having a behavior analysis leadership conference in Miami in March, and we'd love to have you come. So if you want to take a second and jot down the web address there, https, then cvent.me/M8KWEW. And if you can't get all that, just go to our website and you'll be able to link from there. And that's balcllc.org. So I'd like to thank everybody for attending or who will be watching this in the future. From the Behavior Analyst Leadership Council, we want to say stay safe, be well, and see you perhaps in March in Miami.